Just one, we may have to delay a bit towards 8:40. Yeah, so
Okay.
the participant count is still slowly increasing.
Okay. Danish, it's 8:40 now. Should I start now?
Please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this important discussion. For the first time since the political shifts of 2018 and the subsequent reforms within our institutions, the Election Commission faces its most significant test of impartiality, the 2026 Sarawak Redelineation. With 17 new Dun seats added in July 2025, the map of Sarawak is being redrawn as we speak. Are we moving forward? Are we moving toward one person, one vote, one value, or are we seeing the same outcome again? My name is Chia Jiashen, and I'm your moderator for tonight's session. Here are some housekeeping rules before I introduce our speaker for tonight. First, this is a live session on YouTube. And for those who represent your organization, kindly insert your organization's name in bracket after your name. You may do so by clicking participants. Click on the three button after your name, and you should be able to see the renaming option. Third, please keep your mic muted at all times during the presentation, but you may turn on your cam if you want to. We'll have roughly 45 minutes of Q&A session. I do encourage you to ask questions verbally to make the session engaging. But you may put your questions in the chat box as well. Last but not least, for those watching live on YouTube, you may also ask the questions in the comment section, and I will check the comment section from time to time. So now, let me introduce our speaker for tonight, Dinesh Prakash Chako. Dinesh studied geomatics at RMIT University in Australia. After graduating, he started his career by producing maps for Australian tourist publications. He then worked at a software company specializing in geographic information systems, GIS, for various business applications. Later, he joined TomTom, a leading GPS company. In 2017, Danesh returned to Malaysia to work as a data analyst at Invoke, an electoral data analytics firm. Currently, he is a senior research analyst at the Jeffrey Sachs Center at Sunway University. Since joining Tindak Malaysia in 2013, he has spoken and written about Malaysian electoral issues domestically and internationally in cities like Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur. His expertise on redelineation and electoral matters is sought after by ADUNs, members of parliament, the Election Commission, academics, civil society, and media. He's also currently the chair of Persatuan Bertindak Pilihan Raya Adil dan Saksama, or we call it Tindak, as well as the core partner of Tindak Malaysia Network Services Limited Liability Partnership. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Danesh.
Thank you very much, Jaswan, and selamat petang kepada Anda semua. Today's presentation will be done in English, and time to time, if you have any questions, please reserve it during the Q&A. First of all, let me share my screen. Probably share the whole thing. Okay. I would like to welcome everyone to attending a very important webinar. This is part of our ongoing redelineation series. For your information, this redelineation series used to talk about historical redelineation exercises. Like for Sarawak, we did one in 1968, and we are done for other redelineation exercises. But this is where today's webinar is going to be different. We are not looking at the history per se. We are looking to the future that might occur anytime after Easter. To those who are observing Good Friday, blessed Good Friday, and wishing you in advance Happy Easter. Easter is the last major holiday in Sarawak, if I'm not mistaken, before the Gawai takes place. So hence, the window for the upcoming Sarawak redelineation will take place. So please support us, our initiative, by scanning the QR code. Later, I will share it with you. If you find this webinar useful, if you find our support all these months, we have been preparing for this big day, whenever it happens, for nearly a year. Kindly support us. Unlike previous redelineation webinars, I would like to present this webinar in a slightly different format, whereby it's more of I will pose some questions and I will give you the answers. It's not really per se a lecture, and it's dedicated to for all those who want to know Sarawak redelineation A to Z without getting too much into detail. So first of all, we will look at the process. Then subsequently, we look about how to draw the boundaries fairly. And more importantly is what can you do about it. So these are some of the materials for the redelineation. Need not to worry. These slides will be issued once it gets uploaded through a particular platform and will be sent to you. We would like to also announce a sneak preview of our upcoming web page that is dedicated for Sarawak redelineation. For those who have been following us on social media like Facebook or X, you have seen images and links pertaining to the Sarawak redelineation. Okay, so we decided to consolidate all of them into one single page. And if time permits during the Q&A, I will show you a bit more. Let's start with the redelineation, the process of it. In Malaysia, we need to understand one thing. The election commission is limited to just drawing electoral boundaries, hence redelineation, or the official term delimitation. Okay, in Malay would be persempadanaan semula. So in the case of other countries, we have another process that takes place before the redelineation. It's called apportionment, pengagihan kawasan pilihan raya for the different units. It's the apportionment, means allocating the constituencies to different units of the country. So what do I mean by this? If I share the next slide, is in Malaysia, we have 222 parliamentary seats. That number is defined by the Dewan Rakyat. That's the first part of it. So Malaysia is allocated 222. But more importantly is the apportionment part of it. How is this 222 is being distributed? It is determined by the Dewan Rakyat, which passed a constitutional amendment. Okay. The last time we had that amendment or that distribution was, if I'm not mistaken, was in 2005. That was 21 years ago. That's a long time ago. Then within the states, not only we have parliamentary constituencies, we also have the state constituencies. Dewan Undangan Negeri. Okay. I'm still not very sure whether Sarawak still wants to refer it as Dewan Undangan Sarawak constituencies or Dewan Undangan Negeri constituencies, because I visited the Sarawak state legislature and they still refer it as DUNS, Dewan Undangan Negeri Sarawak. The composition, meaning the number of constituencies for every state, is determined by who? It's the State Legislative Assembly. Up to 1983, the number of state constituencies that we have was influenced by the number of parliamentary seats. So there is this concept called the principle of simple multiple, whereby the number of state constituencies shall be the same or multiple of the parliamentary seats. So for example, if Sarawak has 31 right now, what should be the DUN count? It should be 31, 62, and 93, not the one that we know right now, 99. But because in 1983, this linkage was removed, which we in Tindak, we don't agree, which I will later tell you why. This removal linkage means every state can determine how many constituencies they want freely. Okay. Now, the first question we get asked, and I received this question when some of you guys were signing up to this webinar: has the redelineation for Sarawak has started? The answer is no, right? So, though the new number of seats, the 99, was gazetted in July 2025, EC has not formally started the redelineation. So the answer is the redelineation has not started. Because I want to put this out because there are some sort of misinformation that has happened many months ago, even last year, if I'm not mistaken, where someone claimed that the redelineation was even completed for Sarawak. Now, there is another question was posed. And by the way, particularly for this redelineation, we have noticed the Sarawak government has been making a lot of announcements, which I understand where they come from. But in the process of making those announcements, there are things that we are concerned about. So one of the things that got mentioned was, is the redelineation report going to be tabled in July 2026, which means less than 3 months from now? What would be the answer? The answer is practically no. No, why is this is not possible? You know, when the redelineation takes place, which I'll show you later, there's a huge due process in how it is done. EC needs to carry out two, maximum two, minimum one rounds of community consultation, whereby when the EC displays the first draft of recommendations proposal, you are given 1 month. So let's say if EC were to start the redelineation on this Monday, hypothetically, 1 month means it will end at early May. Then after that, EC has to compile all the feedback, which I'll let you know later. Then they had to do a local inquiry. Right? Local inquiry can spread over multiple days. In for case of Sarawak, it will be done in multiple cities. For example, Kuching will serve all the areas of Bagan Kuching, Bagan Serian, Sri Aman, for Serian, all that area. Then Cebu will have its own, Bintulu will have its own, Miri will serve this amount. Okay. So it will take days, right? And then after the feedback, then EC has to revise and put up a second proposal. That again will trigger the whole process again will take a month. So by the time you finish, you might be, and by the what I'm saying is actually quite rushed through. You do it by June. Then EC will have to spend time to review all the final proposal and table it to the Prime Minister. Now, the question is it possible? My answer, it is no. But let's find out if it happens. Okay. For those who have visited our dedicated Sarawak redelineation website using our Canva platform, you actually have seen this before. Basically, the redelineation gets started the moment the Gazette has been stating that the redelineation proposal, okay, keyword is proposal, recommendation, was issued. EC will give you a draft proposal of how the 31 parliamentary seats and 99 group seats. 1 month of display. Now, in that 1 month of display, people are called to do representation, but with a particular focus, the form of representation called objection. There are three groups of objection groups for this section: state government, local authority, and a body of 100 voters or more of the affected constituency. Then, once 1 month is over, you have the local inquiry. Because EC wants to see if you objected, what is your ground? What is your alternative? Okay. Even at least you have one objection. That is, and that triggers a change of boundaries. Then you do this whole second round, where EC will going to produce a second draft, which is the last option for you to make your stance. The whole process happens again. Then what happens is EC does a local inquiry, get the feedback, and then they will modify and present it to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, with or without modification, That's the key word, with or without modification to the final report, tables it to the Dewan Rakyat. And the record draft recommendations from the EC needs to get support no less than half of the Dewan Rakyat. Once you get that, then it gets approved. Then it will be sent to the king, and the draft becomes an order. The order which gets gazetted, that effectively enforce the boundaries, but that will come to effect when the actual elections takes place. Okay. For your information, let's say in the Dewan Rakyat, for reasons that we may know or not know, the proposal that the Prime Minister tabled, that EC's report, right, with or without modification, tabled to the Dewan Rakyat, didn't get more than the half, okay, or gets rejected, or for some reason gets withdrawn, okay, the Prime Minister has to consult, if he or she thinks needs to consult EC, amend the proposal and bring it to the Dewan Rakyat. In Malaysian history, no redelineation proposals laid by EC that was taken up by the Prime Minister has been rejected. Okay? So this has not been tested before. And this whole thing presumes that if it gets rejected for the first time, then the Prime Minister will take it and maybe want to discuss with EC, let's modify this thing, hoping the Dewan Rakyat will approve. Because our constitution, specifically the 13th schedule, doesn't give the possibility. What happens the second round, the Dewan Rakyat decided to reject it. Okay. And for your information, there is no involvement of the Dewan Negara. Now, what is the role of EC? Or some of us might think, oh, EC is the one who draws the boundary and enforces the boundaries. The answer is no. From 1962 onwards, EC was reduced as what I call a redelineation consultant. EC can only propose the boundaries. You know, the first proposal, second proposal, and then you come out to the final proposal, send it to the Prime Minister. If it gets rejected, then you have to modify it. That's all. They cannot enforce the boundaries. It's up to the Dewan Rakyat. Okay, this also is a possibility. We are also aware that the Sarawak government wants to do an election anytime this year, or even the most even next year. They are hoping to run on 99 seats. But if the redelineation process takes time, then what would happen if the Sarawak suddenly dissolves before the redelineation approval? And for your information, there is a precedence for this. We have seen that in Sabah 1994. We have seen in Sabah for 2018. And for Sarawak's case, it was 1987. So for your information, in 1987, before that, the state constitution said there's 56 seats. But the state elections ran on 48 seats. Why? Because the moment the Sarawak redelineation started in 1987, there was a political crisis. The then Chief Minister, Taib Mahmud, decided to suddenly dissolve the DUN. So, of course, in terms of priority, EC has to run that elections first and put away the redelineation aside. That is why in the 1987 elections, you will only see 48 seats, as opposed to 56. So if this happens for now, the answer is it would run on 82 seats. Would this create a constitutional crisis? So far, from my understanding or the experience of Sarawak in 1987, Sabah 1994, Sabah of 2018, it has not happened. 2018 nearly caused it, but for some reason it didn't happen, because political situation changed. So Sabah, for your information, in 2016, they added 13 seats. The DUN count was 73. But in 2018, how many seats were contested? 60. So that's something we need to keep in mind. I'll sum this up. What are the responsibilities of the key players for the redelineation? EC proposed SPR Suronja Pilihan cadangkan Prime Minister determines what it means. The Prime Minister can determine when the redelineation report gets submitted to the Dewan Rakyat. Yes, our 13th schedule for those who have signed up via our Google Calendar Meet, I've asked you to read that reading material. You will know there's a statement called as soon as possible. Seberapa cepat, secepat mungkin, the Prime Minister is supposed to submit the redelineation report. What it means as soon as possible. It could be one day, it could be 1 week. And for the case of Sabah 2016 to 17 redelineation exercise, it meant 2 years, right? So if the redelineation report, let's say by EC, and you fulfill every aspect of the 13th schedule, but if the Prime Minister of the day doesn't agree, he or she can delay it as much as possible, and it doesn't get approved on time. Okay. And the Dewan Rakyat disposes. Okay. So this again the other scenario. Let's say the EC produced the most fairest boundaries that Sarawak has ever seen. Yang paling adil. Prime Minister, for whatever reason, okay, I will just table it. I'll let the Dewan Rakyat decide. Then the Dewan Rakyat can reject it. And then it compels the Prime Minister to retable a draft. The new draft for hoping the second time it gets approved. So what might happen? You may not have the fairest boundaries. I will not go bore you down too much into the details because I've gone through this. But the role I want to emphasize for Sarawak government, particularly the DUN, is one, it determines the composition of the DUN, and it is but for the Sarawak government, either as a state government or the local authority, pihak berkuasa tempatan. They become the bodies to object the proposal by EC. That's all. Let's go to the next part. Redelineation. Question about fair drawing. How do you draw electoral boundaries fairly? Our 13th schedule has 4 principles. And we go through these principles in brief. Some of you who have read the material that I've given you will know the full detail. First principle, all constituencies must be within Sarawak's boundaries. For this case, I'm contextualizing for Sarawak. Every DUN shall have one parent parliament. DUN Pending has one parent parliament called Bandar Kuching, but Bandar Kuching can have 2 or more DUNs. Pending, Padungan, Batu Lintang, for example. Okay. Among the 4 principles, EC honors 2A. So far in history, there were no incidents of this being dishonored or being violated. For practical reason, do you want a situation where DUN Pending, for example, part of it is Bandar Kuching for parent parliament, part of it is in Santubong, right? It will create confusion, right? Confusion for EC, confusion for voters, confusion for everyone. For that reason, this principle is on. Next principle, 2B. This is something people don't talk about. When you draw boundaries, have you considered sufficient facilities for voter registration, which is now redundant, but it is mentioned in the constitution, and polling machinery, which has become more important as a result of Undi 18. We have more voters, so we need to have more facilities. So this principle aspires every constituency to have enough facilities. And from my understanding, it is from this principle that the EC would say, where possible, we ensure the constituency shall be under the care of one district or one local authority area. There is another principle 2D. We talk about local ties, which I'll talk later. A lot of the emphasis about 2D is about respecting district boundary and local council boundaries. But from EC's perspective, that talk about respecting the PBT and local district boundaries starts at 2B. Right? And for information, unfortunately speaking, constituencies in Malaysia, it doesn't matter, Sabah, Sarawak, Peninsular Malaysia, they are not necessarily designed with enough polling facilities. That's a big problem. If your daerah mundi means the place where your polling district where you are defined to this place to vote, and your polling center happens to be outside of the daerah mundi, there is something not right. Next part. This is one of the most contentious topic yang paling hangat, topik yang amat berkontroversi. Is there a limit for the constituency voter population size? Officially speaking, we use the electorate, right? The answer is no. The constitution says within the state boundaries, so let's say within Sarawak, the constituency shall have approximately equal number of electors, okay? Up to EC to define what is approximately equal, with the exception, with the kekecualian, for the country districts and rural constituencies which has difficulty in reaching electors and other disadvantages where a weightage of areas ought to be given. So as much as possible, we aim to equalize. So for example, in urban areas, you should aim to equalize. Now, Sarawak, we have technology, has vast interiors, big rivers, very long coastlines. You know, some places that still have actually a lot of places still have a lot of difficulty in reaching electors. So if we do a strict equalization, for example, Ulu Raja and Kapit merge together, it becomes a super constituency, right? In terms of area, but it gets equalized. That's the concern. If you equalize, you get too big of an area for an MP or an ADUN to service. But we can see there are some exception to this, because when the EC decided to draw certain rural constituencies, they did not consider much about this difficulty in reaching electors or weightage of area. Different organizations have different stats. What is an electoral quota? Electoral quota means an average. So if you use the 2022 population, for Sarawak, every DUN using 1996 should, on average, have around 19,000 voters, 19,620 plus voters. Okay. If for parliament, it was, I think, if not mistaken, it's around 60,000 plus. Obviously speaking, you cannot have the same number for all constituencies. If it happens, it's extremely rare. I've seen that before, but that's because not intentionally designed, it's just the voter population happened. It happened in Johor. So we put different limits. So the Kuala Lumpur Declaration that was signed a few years ago between International IDEA and international organizations that deals with elections and democracy, Tindak Malaysia, Perludem Indonesia, and Bersih, we say where we should aim is keep it to plus or minus 10%. Okay. I would say that is very tight, but it's a global standard, by the way. And for those areas that is rural or the very vast interior, you cannot have open representation, meaning that I don't want to follow the plus or minus 10%. Maybe you should give plus 50, minus 50%. So Kuala Lumpur Declaration says you cannot. There's other ways to go about it. Tindak would say, okay, for Sarawak, we give it more leeway, plus or minus 20%. And if we cannot hit the plus or minus 20%, then we will give you the reason why we couldn't achieve it. For some of you who have visited and saw our proposal, you have seen, we write it down. We can't achieve the equalization for this DUN and this parliament based on our drawing, and this is the reason why. Okay, and our fellow partner that we work together for Sarawak Redelineation is the Rise of Social Efforts. They have confirmed with me that we should try to aim plus or minus 20%, but if we cannot, the maximum tolerable limit is plus or minus 33%. So different organizations have different stats. But the point is, we have a limit as opposed to what the constitutions currently say. Basically, no limit. Now, question is, were there any limits? When Malaya got its Merdeka constitution, we had a strict limit within the state, plus or minus 15%. Bear in mind, Malaya at that time was rural. Only one state, if I'm not mistaken, was urbanized. Most parts of the country doesn't have very good access of roads. Railway maybe is okay, but it was still plus or minus 15%. And at the then independent EC, who have joined our webinar for the 1960 exercise, actually was able to execute that plus or minus 15% as close as possible. And for Sarawak, for the very first delineation, the very first persempadanan in 1968, EC says plus or minus 30%. Okay. Of course, EC said there's one or two constituencies cannot achieve, so this is the reason we gave you. Technically speaking, in 1962, the plus or minus 15% is gone. They had this concept called 2 to 1. 2 to 1 it actually means anything. Some of us interpret as plus or minus 33%, but Tindak studies has shown that it is actually not plus or minus 33%. It's up to whoever draws the boundary. 2 to 1, it's a abstract concept. So the EC at that time put plus minus 30%. In 1968, so this is some of the things we have to consider. So if the current EC were to proceed with the redelineation, can we at least aim plus or minus 20%? I mean, 30% was many years ago. Now we are in modern times. Now, the question, some of you are very concerned. How can you equalize if Sarawak has vast interiors? That's not fair, and and some of this concern is not only tied because the area of places like Baram, Ulu Raja, and Kapit, or even Bintulu. Unfortunately speaking, it has this ethnic element to it. Because for your information, Sarawak is ethnically mixed state. This is, and like Sabah is ethnically mixed. This is not like Peninsular Malaysia. So hence sometimes the contention becomes of ethnic representation because areas like Baram is kind of considered as where the Orang Ulu is being represented, for example. So if you try to equalize, chances are you may end up creating more mixed seats, but that's where the concern will fall back about ethnic representation. But putting that aside, because the moment we focus too much on the ethnic part, then we are at risk of ethnic gerrymandering, manipulating electoral boundaries on racial grounds. So this is my answer. This question was posed to me when we did our redelineation training. How do you address the constituencies with large areas? First of all, we must understand whose responsibility is to ensure physical road network and digital connectivity is responsible of the federal and the Sarawak state government. Second, constituencies with large areas, you should give special allocation for the MPs and ADUNs to have more staff, more officers. The MP and ADUN cannot be everywhere, but at least their face is represented by the staff. And third, Sarawak must reinstate local elections. No need to wait for Peninsular Malaysia, just bring back that local elections. Baram should be managed by a local council. Ulu Raja and Kapit must be managed by their own local councils. All the community-based issues, while your MP and ADUN focus on legislation. Now, there's one interesting case. We talked about a lot about equalization. I would like to say Baram is a poster child of equalization. Baram adalah contoh baik di mana SPR yang lama tu pernah membina satu kawasan pilihan raya yang seimbang. For your information, Baram covers an area bigger than Perak, around that size. So large area, right? So this is supposed to be an exception to the equalization, right? Next part. It more or less respect the district boundaries, okay, except for the barrio part, which is the peculiarity of the Miri district, but put that aside. Baram is within the Miri division. So it respects local ties, which we'll touch about this later. And to our surprise, plus or minus 10% of the electoral quota. If Baram can equalize, why can't other places be equalized? I'm referring to places like Tanjung Manis or Igan, which is smaller in area, where difficulty in reaching electors is not as serious as Barang. Now, this is an interesting topic matter. It's about because of Sarawak's huge landmass, we need to have more state assembly seats. Right? Technically speaking, from my understanding, the legislature building can accommodate 108 members. Right now, the Sarawak Dun is trying to accommodate 99. So the first argument is, see, because of more seats, Sarawak is huge, hence more seats. But what's the point of having more seats if the number of days in your legislature doesn't increase? Redelineation should follow geographic consideration, not population. So, for your information, Sarawak is not a rural state. More than 50% of the population actually resides in urban area. But at the same time, you have a vast amount of people staying in rural area. So, if redelineation should follow geographic consideration, then it is kind of understandable for Ulu Raja and Kapit to be having not to equalize. But how about places like Dun Gedong, Batang Sarong area, Batang Lupar, Igan, Tanjung Manis, Muka? They are not so huge in area and they have reasonable amount of connectivity. Let's even talk about Gedong. It's not too far away from Kuching. And this is something we will agree. Although I would say the fact that was laid by the Sarawak State Speaker is not correct. Bintulu is the largest parliamentary constituency in Sarawak. In what sense? In terms of area? No. In terms of voter count? No. So I'm not sure where he was getting that fact. But where we can agree with him is the Bintulu should be subdivided into two, that division. You can actually create two parliamentary seats in Bintulu completely within that division and you can attain equalization. 6 dunes. Okay. How can an MP manage a large area? I've addressed. You should give the MP more resources. That's the answer. And the second thing is the responsibility of the federal and state government, you have to increase the connectivity. And then the other argument was fishermen operates cross boundaries. How can we delineate based on population? Yes, there are a lot of forms of local ties, right? Yes, we have technology fishermen cross operate in multiple district boundaries. That's true, right? But at the same time, we have to balance local ties and equalization, right? You bring communities together, but aim for equalization. What local ties can we consider? So many forms, district boundaries, local authorities, and particularly for Sarawak, I have to say, you do need to consider linguistics. We in Tindak, we are not an expert for it, but we can find relevant information on how the different indigenous communities are divided by linguistics. But as that's for SPR to really consider. I'll just show you quickly because I'm a bit mindful of the time. There are boundaries in Sarawak that really needs to be rectified. On the left-hand side, you will see in Sri Aman, most of the areas, like places like Simangang and Mungu Sabun, you're part of the parliamentary seat of Sri Aman. But then you have a daerah mundi called Lamanak. Lamanak is literally next to Sri Aman town. But for some reason, it is combined with Batang Lupar. That's a violation of local time because you're telling Sri Aman voters are to be divided. Constituencies should bring communities together, not divide them arbitrarily. Then the other one is Guntarat in Punjab Bone. You know the shape is very irregular. Something is really not right. And because of that irregular shape, Punjab Boni has this weird shape, the parent parliamentary seat. What can you do about it? This is something I want to lay to everyone here. Easy is to consider all representations submitted for the draft recommendations. Now, from those form of representations, there's two types, endorsement and objections. One is endorsements, sokong. Saya sokong persempadanan yang SPR memberikan untuk DUN ini. That's it. No local inquiry, no siasatan tempatan is required. Then you have the bantahan, the objections. There's two types of bantahan. Okay. One is the bantahans that doesn't qualify for local inquiry, and there's bantahans who qualify for the local inquiry. So there is the objections that don't qualify local inquiry from our understanding of past redelineation exercises referring to 1987, 1996 Sarawak is like societies, political parties, bodies that doesn't have 100 voters or more, your JKK, you name it. Okay, just pretty much anyone. Historically speaking, SPR or EC at that time used to write in the final redelineation report what they think about these representations that was objecting that didn't qualify for local inquiry. But from the 2015, I don't see that, if I'm not mistaken. The recent redelineation exercises, I don't see that anymore. EC is just to consider, but whether you get a response or nothing. Now, the other part is objections qualify for local inquiry. State government, local government, and body of 100 or more voters. Okay. The most important thing is your constituency must be affected. Okay. That one, you have to see when the redelineation proposal comes out, do they mention your constituency got affected? If your constituency is affected, then you should start looking in assembling people, more than 100 voters ideally, for your local inquiry. I'll quickly go through because it's already 9:20. In 30 days, let's say the redelineation proposal comes out on this Monday, hypothetically. You are required within the first week, quickly download, copy, or see the proposed EC recommendations. It could come in PDF format, it could come in interactive map, but at bare minimum, at specific designated places in your constituencies, you will see the publication for it. Quickly go and study. Second, assess whether your constituency was affected. Got change or not change, right? If got if EC says it's affected, then okay, now we need to start proceeding to the next level. Assess your constituency again, the 13th schedule. We talked about the 4 principles. Obviously, 2A, you don't have to worry about it. 2B is a bit challenging, but if you have evidence of your constituency being proposed doesn't have enough facilities, please go and object. 2C and 2D, 2C is about equalization, 2D is about respecting local ties. See whether the constituency adheres. If the constituency doesn't adhere any of the principle 13 schedule, please start filing for an objection. Then, of course, determine to endorse or object, and you should focus. Is it for the DUN level or is it for the parliament level? If the objection is needed, be specific in your argument. Don't say, oh, I object the whole of Sarawak. Right? I don't agree with this whole equalization. I don't agree with the boundaries. You do that, your objection letter gets rejected. Be specific. Is your constituency affected? Is DUN pending? Then focus the situation in DUN pending and quickly gather more than 100 voters. I would say everything from the download all the way to the assess the proposal and determine, ideally speaking, get it done in the first week. The second, third, fourth week is for you to collect people to object, for as objector, formalize and agree on the objection points. And very important, file the objection in time. In 2015, one of the political parties started this whole process of trying to analyze 5 days before the closing date. Don't do that. Where we, Tindak, and our fellow partner roles will come into play. We will we provide all the materials for you to read, provide education materials, be it a video, be it in a website, be it in publications. Okay. We in Tindak specifically, we compile all the analysis and present the analysis for public consumption because we want people to object. I mean, access to data is important. EC needs to ensure the data is presented in a manner that facilitate representation, right? Be it in downloadable materials or interactive maps, whatever form, they need to do that, right? And we will do something similar. We will provide analysis because we want people to make objections and provide advice to potential redelineation objector groups together with Rose. We are actually looking at putting this call out we are looking for Sarawakian groups in Peninsular Malaysia for us to do redelineation trainings, one in KL and one in Johor Bahru, if possible. And we will do our part together with Rose, with other civil society, pressure EC to comply with the 13th schedule. We have an understanding, and as mentioned before, EC can draw the fairest boundaries, but it can get rejected by the Dewan Rakyat. It is okay because EC must show its independence. EC must show it is willing to follow constitution. If the Dewan Rakyat rejects or the Prime Minister delays, we know who to blame. But if EC go and draw electoral boundaries that doesn't respect 13th schedule, then we expect the Dewan Rakyat to reject it and compel EC to make the correction. And we will work with Rose and other CSOs in Sarawak and our aligned Sarawakian groups to ensure that the free and fair boundaries. We will do our best. So this is why you notice our social media now, we have a lot of materials we're putting up. We actually kind of training you, especially those Sarawakians, how to respond. I know some of the comments are quite hard hitting towards our post. It's okay. But more importantly is hard hitting on social media is one thing, but we want to see you filing an objection. The hour is near, anytime. It could be this coming week, it could be the following week, you never know. If you are not signed up as a redelineation objector, please sign up as soon as possible. You can follow us on our Facebook page and our X. Time to time, we will put that call out. And this is a special message for those who are redelineation objectors. It is also time for you to step up during the redelineation process to start finding 100 people or more. Of course, we can't provide you all the answers today. When that day happens, we will provide assistance, but we want you to mobilize and start formulating a response. You don't have to agree to our proposal. It's okay. But more important is we want you to file an objection. Your job is to influence EC, not to influence us. We are not the EC. And finally, be educated in the depth and the breadth of the redelineation process. So with that, I end my presentation and I'll hand the time for Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you, Dinesh, for the presentation on the Sarawak redelineation exercise in the different format. So now it is time for Q&A. You may raise your hand and then turn on your mic. When you raise your hand, I'll cue you, and then you can open your mic and ask questions. While the audience is still formulating their questions, maybe I can ask a question first. So the audience might wonder about this. Since just now you mentioned that the redelineation has not started yet. So when does it actually start?
Good question. Actually, we don't know. It's like the question is when is the next GE? We don't know. It's like the next GE is in the hands of the Prime Minister, right? And then for this case, it's in the hands of the EC. But for us, we have been getting ready since July last year. Why? Because we thought the redelineation might take place even last year, but it didn't happen because we had sub elections, we have multiple holidays, and on top of it, one other by election. But now, after Easter, there is technically nothing holding back EC to do so. So we are speculating it might be this month. And that explains why we are doing the webinar today, not when the redelineation process starts.
Okay. So you also show
Uh,
us oh yes, Paul, you may turn on your mic.
Hello, I just wanted to ask how I can object. I'm based in Australia, but I've obviously been following and reading all the materials that you've sent, so thank you very much for doing this. And I'm a voter in Bandar Kuching. So, yeah, so how can I do something from overseas?
okay. Thanks, Paul. Okay. So, good question that you have asked. Yes, it will be quite challenging from your side. What we can do at this point is we in Tindak and Rose will have to work together in the very first week when the proposal comes out, first of all, we have to ascertain whether your constituency was affected, right? If your constituency is deemed affected, then we have to find out, we have to see who enrolls. Because for on the ground mobilization, we have to rely rows to to start group of people. Then we will contact you. So just at this point, we'll ask is for you to just be ready, right? And the other thing is, let's say even if your constituency is not affected, one of the things you can do is you can ask the EC in Sarawak, as an individual voter, can I file my own individual representation? Right? Of course, you wouldn't qualify for local inquiry, but you just want to make a stance that Bandar Kuching deserves a redrawing, and EC you didn't do, despite there's violation of 13th schedule. So I would like to file a representation. How should do you entertain? That's one. If they entertain, then you should consider filing that. But if your constituency is deemed affected, even if one polling district moved out from Bandar Kuching and ended up in Stampin, then we need to start working with you, depending where you are, which constituency in Bandar Kuching you are, to form an objection group. So things that most likely is we just get your details, and if where possible, we need to see how to get your signature across.
So a follow-up question from Paul's question. Since Paul is not in the country at the moment, does it mean that does he have to be in the country when he makes objection?
This is a good question. Ideally speaking, yes, but practically speaking, it's not possible. Uh, let's be very clear. Let's say if redelineation takes place this month, I don't expect overseas Sarawakis to fly in just to do a signature signing of it. This is something that I have to discuss with Rose and to see how to go about it.
Okay. Any other question from the crowd?
How about any other questions?
So while we are waiting, I have another question. So just now
Yes.
you also mentioned that after the EC release the short, then it is time for objection. So if there are two rounds of objections, if EC makes no changes to their recommendations after first round objection, and then during the second round objection, the same objector group is the same objector group, but they find some new supporting grounds or evidence. Will the EC entertain them in the second round of local inquiry?
This is a subjective answer, so I'm trying to understand your question. So the first proposal, EC change boundaries, and you have an
EC change.
objector group.
Mhm.
But
But
after the
then,
objector group go for local inquiry, whatever it is, but EC still insists the same.
yes.
Uh,
And then can the same group of people make the second round of objection based on largely
or,
similar?
I mean, if you ask me, the first concern is not the content of the objection letter. My only concern, which we are still pressing for EC for the answer, is if the EC doesn't change the boundaries or largely retains it, is it still deemed as affected? If the answer is still affected, then by all means, please pursue, make your stance. As a matter of fact, I would like to propose one thing. I mean, objections for a local inquiry, will it succeed? It depends on what are your line of arguments, right? And whether the EC is receptive. So it's quite subjective whether you succeed or not. But the objections for local inquiry can be used as a platform that even before that to voice your concerns, to pressure EC. It's not only just about your stance, about this constituency. We want EC to be fair. We want EC to comply with 13th schedule. So do something. This is where your objection group of 100 voters has an additional impact as opposed to as a society will do. So, for your information, we in Tindak and I've also suggested to Rose that even though we don't form a body of 100 voters or more, we should file a representation. But body of 100 or 100 voters or more, you should pursue. Whether the EC changes the boundary of didn't entertain, by all means pursue.
Okay, understood. Um, then I should move on to the second section of your presentation about the principles.
Yep.
So you mentioned about principle 2B, about the polling
Yep.
facilities and machinery. So
Yep.
we have seen examples in West Malaysia on
Yep.
some. We have seen the cases in West Malaysia, but how about Sarawak? How do you determine sufficient facilities? What constitutes sufficient facilities in Sarawak, especially for some Sarawak rural and interior constituencies that are highly accessible? How do we know if that clause is honored?
This is a very good question you've asked. Generally speaking, okay, polling machinery means a lot of things, where everything ranges to the facilities for your nomination to all the way for your postal vote, and also the one that everyone will associate is your schools, right? And the day ones to a certain degree. Okay. For Sarawak, let's be very clear, especially in the deep rural interior areas, there are very limited amount of schools and there are very limited amount of day ones or balaraya. What does that mean? EC actually uses the longhouses as the polling center. Okay. So how should I go about understanding this? If the constituency have enough facilities. If your constituency has 10 Daramundis, and I hope EC finds a way to present this like a manner that people can understand. Can the 10 Daramundis host 10 polling centers of its own? Of course, the EC can give a counter argument to me. It has done before. They will say, according to Elections Act 1958, Section 7, EC has the power to change the polling centers from time to time. That is true, right? But at the same time, we have to go back to what the 2B is talking about. Does your constituency have enough facilities to support polling machinery? So if you have a constituency with 10 polling districts, do you have 10 potential polling places? Right? If the answer is no, then I think you should file an objection, make a point. Where are your potential 10 polling centers?
Okay. When you mention 10 polling centers, you are referring to one polling center in each
Yeah,
diagram.
yeah, only. Yeah. I think there's another question was asked in the chat.
Yes. It is from Dorothy from PPDM. What is the age considered for the objection?
Basically, it's a Malaysian voter means 18 years and above. But very important, one important aspect, you must be in the electoral roll that SPR has decided to use for the redelineation. So, for example, if the redelineation takes place in April or May, SPR would say the latest redelineation roll or the current the electoral roll that was used for the basis of redelineation was December. So then more. So this is where we have to be a bit mindful of those who just joined in as 18 years old. Chances are you may not be qualified to be an objector, not because you're not a voter uh, now. Let's say, I rephrase with my statement. Let's say you're an 18-year-old voter today, but back in December, you were not in the electoral roll. But if SPR says I'm using the electoral roll of that cycle, then chances are I bring this 18-year-old that is qualified today will not fit into this definition. So my recommendation is try to stick to those from 19 years and above, so that we don't have any dispute about it.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me check YouTube Live, the comment section. Okay, no question on YouTube.
Maybe this time I would like to maybe give an opportunity to share something first while people are still thinking through. Okay. For your information, we will do a soft launch of this website over the weekend as we're still finalizing some of the contents. This website is very simple in terms of layout. It's nothing fancy. It's just functional. Okay.
Then, sorry to
It is
interrupt.
this. Yep.
Are you
I
sharing
haven't
screen?
shared. Oh, my apologies. I didn't share my screen. Thank you. Okay. I repeat again myself. This dedicated web page under Tindak Malaysia website is catered to cover everything about the Sarawak redelineation to the best of our abilities. It is catered for multiple audiences, and it is designed in a manner that you are required to read a lot first before even thinking of making a proposal. Because some of us are tempted to let's use the data and start drawing. But if you don't know what you're trying to draw, then you end up proposing something even worse. So I'll just go through you with this web page briefly. There are 4 sections, but more sections may be added subject to the situation. The first section is general public use. As a matter of fact, that's the section that we used to advertise our Canva website. Okay. Then we have created a separate section for those in civil society and political parties, because these groups have the capacity to mobilize. So you will notice some of the contents in this section is different to for the Kegunaan Awam. Okay. Because Kegunaan Awam is more like getting you an understanding what the Redelineation is about, what is Tindak stance is about, what are the challenges in drawing a fair boundaries. And for your information, untuk Kegunaan Awam, we have created a facility for you to build your own DUN, your own parliament on the go with all the information that we have given you. If we don't have any questions, I'll show you briefly. Then for civil society, as part of the follow-up to all the trainings we have been given, starting from January all the way to March, in 6 cities and towns in Sarawak, we collaborate with International IDEA. We will use electro redistricting app. It is meant to facilitate civil society and political parties who will come together to sit down and draw boundaries fairly and start thinking how to form an objection letter. Then, in early to mid-March, we came to know of a leaked proposal. The leaked proposal is coming from the ruling state government. Of course, the ruling state government has denied it about the authenticity of it, but let's be very clear, the evidence for the leaked proposal linking to the state government, it's quite strong. Okay. So we have created a dedicated section for it. Okay. And by the way, you can click all these sections and you go jump straight to it. As much as possible, we try to keep the website contents for most of it as bilingual, but sometimes it's a mix of one is Bahasa Malaysia or in English. We put up this GPS proposal leak documenting for the purpose of training you now on how to respond to EC's proposal. If you don't agree with GPS's proposal, start thinking, how can I go and object? I'm not saying the EC's proposal will look like GPS, but imagine the GPS proposal, it looks something on the real day. What would you do? Do you object or do you endorse? Right? If you object or endorse, let's say you want to object, and then maybe visit the other sections and start thinking on how to redraw the boundaries. Okay. And if some of you just want to cut the chase, we have one dedicated section, all the materials required for redelineation, starting from the Constitution, how to make an objection, how to use the electro redistricting app. Everything is there. More contents will be added over time. So I'll stop talking now. I'll stop sharing because I'll open the time for further questions.
I have one question about the deviation of electoral quota, the limit, the upper and also the lower limit that one should opt for. And you shared three different uh,
Yeah.
three different sets of possibilities. One is from the KL declaration, one is from Tindak, one is from Rose. And for Tindak, you mentioned that the exceptions to the deviation of the electoral quota must be justified. So what are the exceptions that we are talking about here?
It's a good question that you have you put up. So we in Tindak, we say plus minus 20%. Of course, for some of you, oh, that's too strict for Sarawak. Yes, it is. But bear in mind, in 1968, it was plus or minus 30%. Now, I will be transparent about this. We in Tindak, we have redrawn the whole state. 99, some of you have seen. And for your information, when we draw that proposal, we put that proposal to our objectors in Sarawak. They objected to us. They provided us their reply, their feedback. I modified it and sent it back to them again. Do you agree? And they said, okay, I agree. Or they just silent, or someone they said, no, 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 I don't agree. Then it was remodified. Now, what I was doing is basically I'm training them how to respond for the actual D-Day. I will be very frank. Tindak's proposal to attain plus or minus 20% for Sarawak was severely tested. Why? What is the fundamental building block for redelineation? It's your polling district. Of course, the electoral roll is more important. That's the basis of it, but polling district. Okay. The daerah mundi defines where you vote. Each dun has two or more daerah mundis. As a matter of fact, Sarawak has the constituency with the least amount of daerah mundis. That is Dun Pujut in Miri. There's only two DMs. Right. So ideally speaking, every daerah mundi should have more or less an equal voter count. But the reality in Sarawak, unfortunately speaking, is we have some daerah mundis with few hundred voters to a daerah mundi called Kuala Baram, which has 53,000 plus voters. Kuala Baram, daerah mundi has enough voters to form one parliamentary seat. It's bigger in terms of count the entire IGAN. So in that process, I have to say, unfortunately speaking, the inequality of the polling district count, voter count, resulted in us creating oversized, means too many voters, and undersized, too little voters in some places. Not because we want, but because we were limited by it. But I am aware, and I hope EC will do it. They need to subdivide the super daerah mundis. The ones in Kuching, ones in Bintulu, ones in Cebu, ones in Miri. Break them apart, and we lay the foundation for equalization. Now, there is another exception. There, in our proposal, if time permits, I'll show you. Sri Aman and Limbang area, that division, okay, Sri Aman and Limbang. We draw the parliamentary constituency in such a way that it should respect that divisional boundaries. As much as possible, we want the parliamentary boundaries to respect the division of bahagian boundaries. So for Sri Aman, we missed it by 1 or 2%. Same for Limbang, slightly over 1%. And for the case of Limbang, it's very clear cut because the connectivity between Limbang even to Baram is very limited. So for that, okay, for that we have given you the justification. Okay, I'll end it here because there's an important question just popped up. Jason, can you read out the question?
This is from Amirul. Amirul has a comment to make. Maybe I'll invite him to open the mic.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, yeah, you would like to make a comment. So,
Yes, yes. Good morning, where I am now.
Jason, are you able to hear what he's saying?
No. Sorry, sir, your voice is a bit too soft.
Hello, hello, can you hear me?
Maybe you can stay closer to the device.
No, can you hear me?
Or Mr. Amiro, can you write down the comment and we'll read it out? Meanwhile, while he's writing, or maybe wait for others, maybe I'll just quickly share with all of you some of the things we've been doing. For your information, so just press this. For your information, EC is fully aware about how our boundaries look like and how we present this information. Because we have been in touch with the EC commissioners and they have received this sort of information, all the contents that we talked about briefly on this webinar, but we have mentioned like this, the website we have developed, this, the capabilities we have done. This tool, basically, I'm not going to show you in full detail, allows you to create constituencies anywhere. It is catered for the general public. Okay. You can change a base map, and this one, from best of our abilities, we even show you all the schools, meaning polling centers, potential polling centers, and also where information is available, even the halls. Okay. And we explicitly write down the number of voters. So actually, you know how to keep track of it. Okay. This is meant for those who are unable to form a group of 100 voters or more, or areas that which is not covered in our era. Okay. And which I'm going to lay this transparently for everyone. For those who have attended our era trainings, our focus were Bahagian Kuching, Bahagian Sri Aman, Bahagian Sibu, Bahagian Bintulu, and Bahagian Miri. And we have given FOC free of charge, even the data, for even for Bahagian Samarhan. For all voters for other areas, you can talk to us separately or use this platform. Okay. I will stop sharing this and show you. Maybe you read out the comment. Justin, can you read out the comment? Or is there no comment?
Yeah. Mr. Amirul say, while any registered voter can object to a proposal made by EC, the final proposal is in the hand of the PM to be tabled in the parliament. So political pressure on PM may make a difference.
That's true. And this is where I'm going to put out that call to all civil society, to all Sarawakians, that if you strongly feel that the EC's proposals has not respected 13th schedule, aside objecting, which I would say you must do, you should put pressure on all the MPs and also even the Prime Minister. Because as this is actually the first test for the current EC, means the post, I mean, I would like to, maybe the better term, the first test for the post 2018 EC to see whether they are fair in redelineation or not. And in terms of polling process, I can tell you upfront, the situation now is much better than before 2018. But that's in terms of the polling process. even in terms of the electoral roll management, so far, I would say it is in a much better shape now. But what it's not tested is this redelineation.
And there's a further a question from Mr. Amirul. He asked that there was a proposal for a special election boundary commission to be established specifically for boundary review. What is your comment?
Very simple. Tindak, previously in our formation name of Tindak Malaysia, we want the duty of redelineation to be separated out from the election commission and to form as a boundary commission, but it will operate on an ad hoc basis when it is needed. And of course, the makeup has to reflect the independence and the neutrality of that body. Let's be very clear, and this is something I want to make it clear to everyone here. Our EC, the pengurusi, the chairman, and the commissioners, the ahli, that makeup is on paper should be independent, right? But we know who is appointing them. Then the next part is the bureaucracy, your secretariat. According to our constitution, there is no obligation for the EC's secretariat to be part with the Federal Civil Service Board. But from the get-go, it was part of. EC is made up by, the secretariat is made up by the Federal Civil Service Board. And if I'm not mistaken, from 1974, this concept of Federal Civil Service Board had an additional factor added to it. It became an open. It's not like if the government decided to assign you to ECU, you stay there forever. Now, it is possible that a civil servant from another department gets parked to the EC, let's say for 5 years, 10 years. Then the government say, okay, I think I need you for this department or for this ministry, so I'll take you out. Right? So, in effect, EC doesn't have a full control about even their own bureaucracy. And sadly to say, I have to lay this very clearly. The EC Secretariat last year was caught getting involved in federal government initiatives, which is referring to the Kampo Angkat Madani and Suklo Angkat Madani. We have condemned that publicly because I have not actually seen this before, that the EC Secretariat getting involved in federal government initiatives with labeling very clearly it's relating to the government. We know the EC of before 2018 was marred with biasness. Okay, that's for sure. That's understood. But now we're in the post 2018 and we see this quite openly happen. Can the EC commissioner as a chairman can do anything? Not really much. Because you know why? The secretariat is part of who? Part of the Federal Civil Service Board. And also EC reports to who? Prime Minister's Department.
I wonder if Mr. Amirul has anything else to add. So while waiting for his additional comments, I have one last question.
Wait, Mr. Amirul unmuted the microphone.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear.
Okay. Well, whatever we talk about tonight,
Mr. Amirul, you need to speak closer. Just now you were clear, but now we can't hear you. Or Mr. Amirul, you may have to write it down and we'll read it out. So maybe just one you can you wanted to ask something, you want to say something?
Yeah, well, Mr. Amirul is typing. I have one more question. It's about the objection. If the EC does not honor the clause, and you say that is the ground for objection, but what if even though EC does not honor the clause, but the conditions improve from the last redelineation, should I still object?
Okay, I'm trying to understand your question. What can you ask that question again? Maybe just using different words, then I'll make sense of what it is.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
now can. Yes.
Okay. Uh, well, I think the whole thing that we are talking about here tonight is purely, mainly focusing on the no objection on the process, so on and so
Yep.
forth. Yeah.
Yep.
While we are questioning on how the process was carried out by the EC. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not defending EC, but based on the current law that we have,
Yep.
EC is doing it strictly to the law that they have in their hands. Yeah,
Yep.
unless and until the law pertaining to the Schedule 13 of the federal constitution and so on and so forth being changed, even EC cannot do much.
Correct.
They have to uh, comply to the laws relevant to the boundary review.
Mm.
Um, well, this is catch 22 position that we expect EC to change. Then EC would say that you change the law, I'll change. Yeah.
Yep.
This is something that no, we've been talking since since time immemorial. Uh, uh, Insofar as electoral review is concerned, I think everything in Malaysia is in the hand of one person and one person only can make difference. That is the
Okay.
prime minister.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, well, all whatever proposal, whatever objection, whatever process that we have taken,
Mm.
EC would prepare and EC would give it to the prime minister. And as you rightly pointed out just now, um, PM may amend or not before tabling in the parliament. Yeah.
Yep.
So this is as good as PM doing the redelineation himself.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh, well, um, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the law in Malaysia would change. I don't know.
Mm.
I worked towards that some time ago. As you are fully aware, we were close of
Mm.
getting some things to make things different, but unfortunately, the change of the political situation in country doesn't allow us to proceed.
Yep.
So, but whatever it is, I think in the name of justice and equality in the country, integrity of things, we need to continue doing all these things. Yeah, that is my comment about our session tonight.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Danny.
you very much, Amiru. Thank you.
Yeah.
It is true because for your information, this wasn't part of the original design of the Malayan Merdeka Constitution. Our original Malayan Merdeka Constitution envisioned not only an independent EC, it gave the freedom of EC to choose its own secretariat, but more importantly, EC was given the final say of the election boundaries. So those who have attended our 1960 redelineation webinar last year, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about how EC decided to do that, but unfortunately speaking, ended EC's independence and reduced EC to a redelineation consultant. So what Mr. Amirul said is correct. Is the one who has the most power right now is the Prime Minister. And I like what you said, the part that the Prime Minister, with or without modification, gets tabled to Dewan Rakyat. So even the EC can have the fairest boundaries, but towards the last part, I will be afraid, there are certain things that are beyond our control. But it's more important for us is that EC needs to demonstrate its neutrality, its independence, and show the way forward. And all the other players will be found guilty if they caught tampering this whole process.
Danish, do you have a final remark before we end the session tonight?
My final remarks, okay, because I've been my face already 10:05. The hour is near. For Sarawakians, it is time for you to get ready to respond. Objection is the most direct form of you to respond. Even if you don't qualify for an objection, please ask EC whether you can file an individual representation or societal representation. The point is you must do something. And if you're close to your Adun and your MP, please make them understand the importance of fairness of electoral boundaries. It's not getting one political party to win to another, okay? Because that would be gerrymandering. It's more important is the Sarawakians and the whole Sarawak redelineation should be done fairly, and it gets executed fairly, right? And we will inform you in due time via our social media or through the Google Calendar invite when our Sarawak website, redelineation website is up. See which category you fall under, whether you fall under civil society, you fall under political parties or public user, or a person who just likes this sort of stuff, to really study the next few weeks our contents. And stay tuned to our social media when the actual redelineation takes place. We will do our best to produce our response ASAP together with our partner RUS. With that, I also would like to take the opportunity to thank and credit International Idea for supporting us for the redelineation trainings from the months of January to March. We completed all the trainings before Raya, and we look forward to work with all of you in Sarawakians to form a fairer boundaries for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Danish. It's 10:07 now. We should end the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good weekend ahead.